Thank you so much. Thank you, Darren, for a fascinating overview of the digital future, right? And our panel discussion for today is really knowing when your digital initiatives are creating business value. So if I may do a quick, 20 seconds overview of this. Now we know that DX is seen as a basic necessity. It's a business necessity, in this age of constant disruption. I mean, you can't run away with DX. You got to do it. I guess the question really is, it's one thing to say that you want to do DX, but it's completely different matter, right, to make it work successfully. I guess which is what our panel here is here to discuss today. Now, before I jump into the first question and take on any questions that may be coming through Slido from our online audience, I'd like to quickly go around to have a quick 20 seconds introduction from our panelists themselves. And if I may say so myself, I think we have a stellar lineup of panelists today. We have a good mix in terms of gender, in terms of industry, but let them do the talking. Okay, so maybe just a quick 20 seconds of what you're doing right now. Maybe Celine can start first.
Okay, hi, my name is Celine Cotonnec, and I'm the Chief Data and Innovation Officer for Bank of Singapore, which is the private banking arm of OCBC Bank. And my role covers the overall setup of the data strategy for the organization, which is to actually bring data to the people, so data democratization. And it covered the scope from, data architecture, system and platform selection, to also data governance, setting up the policy, monitoring the data quality. I'm in charge of the data protection office as well. And then, of course, looking at all the use cases that can be leveraged using data. So that goes from business intelligence, in-depth ad hoc analytic of some topic, as well as the creation of machine learning and NLP models for the business, right? To be able to drive efficiency and recommend, customer insight to the business.
Thank you, Celine.
Well, good morning, Alp. I was with Allianz until very recently, and for the last 3 years, responsible for the regional transformation program, which included business redesign and then execution through our technology platforms with our friends from Allianz Technology. Good morning, and happy to be here.
Thank you, Ab.
Hi, good morning. Felicia here. Sorry, a bit of dry throat. I'm actually with Infineon, a chemical industry, running the role of global CIO. So very fortunate and privileged to be able to run the overall transformation to grow program. And in addition to the current IT role, I'm also very involved in the whole overall digital analytics center of excellence setup, which we recently launched on 4th of March. So very happy to meet all of you. Hopefully during lunch, we'll have an informal interaction with some of you to gain more insights from your company as well.
Hi, good morning. I'm Ethan from Far East Organization. Right, so we are the largest private property developer in Singapore, right? And we develop, own, and manage a diverse portfolio of real estate products, right? In the residential, commercial, industrial, healthcare, hospitality, and retail segments. So as the Chief Technology Officer, I oversee all aspects of IT. And this will include all the digital initiatives, include the more bread and butter corporate IT stuff, as well as cybersecurity. Right. So I'm very happy to be here today to share my experiences, and I really look forward to learning and exchanging ideas with my fellow panelists, as well as with members of the audience. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ipan. And I think it's going to be great. Right, let's start off with a really, really basic question, right? I mean, the fact of the matter is nobody likes change. Nobody likes to disrupt the way they are doing things, to do things differently, use a new software, use a new, computer. So $1 million question, right? How do you manage change, or how do you manage the stakeholders within your organization when you are deploying new digital initiatives? This could be the key stakeholders in charge of certain departments. It could be the heads of head of the company even, or even the rank and file. How do you, manage these stakeholders? Maybe Celine.
I can take that one. Yeah, so on my field, which is data, right? So we're behind the front end that I usually, launched by our digital colleagues. But The way we have done it, I would say, is in several layers, right? So first of all, we have a very clear data culture strategy. There's someone full-time that is in charge of that. We have set up an operating model which is hybrid. So my team is the hub, right? We don't do everything for the business. We empower the business, right? And so even though I'm in the business, I report to the CEO, but I have created small analytical team everywhere in each of the department, right? So product, risk, compliance, finance, and even each of our market, right? We have identified the champion through doing challenges, right? So innovation ID challenge as well as coding challenge. With a partner platform, we have identified the right people, and then we have named them like power user, we call them, right? And then we have a big roadmap of empowerment, and we have set up, of course, the right platform at the same time, right? Because there's no point of training people in a technology that is not available in your organization, right? So Python is available, Power BI for visualization, and then SQL for data wrangling, and then we have an overall governance. So I have like committee with like a management committee member. We have a data board every 2 months, every month with their -1, and then every 2 weeks with the lower level. So that's how we engage the overall organization in the change. And I think the most important thing is to first set up the vision. And of course, people will say like, you're crazy. You don't expect me to go and code to be able to get access to my data. I want to give my Excel, but set up the vision, train the people, and repeat. Like people don't get anything until it has been repeated 7 times, right? There are some study, right? So it's okay to get the same set of slides and keep repeating them, and again and again and again, because that's how people start to believe in it, right? And it's a journey, but yeah, takes time, but need to engage all the level of stakeholder.
Right, Celine. So I'm hearing 2 things from you, right? So you say share the vision, train, and repeat. I guess for many organizations, we don't do that enough, right? We have a vision, we train, but nobody's interested, then it fizzles out. So what you're saying is that we need to keep repeating until people really get it. But you also shared about having champions, right? I mean, could you elaborate a little bit more? I mean, what is champions? Is it a formal position? Is it folks that, are more on board the changes that you're initiating? What is champion?
So those champions are identified because they have like ability and interest, right? And then they're interested to be trained, to know how to, they're tired of, for example, when we talk about data analytics, they're tired of having, to spend 2 weeks to be able to access the data and, be able to create a report, which is already late, when it comes to the time that the report is prepared, right? So the insights are already too late. So they want to be able to get access to the data quicker. So we told them it's possible, but then you need to learn SQL and Python, and so they're interested. So yeah, this is the people that we're actually relying on. So it's not their main job. That's for sure. Not at the beginning, at least, when they identify, but then, after, through our data board organization, then we validated resource, right? Dedicated resource in each of those teams that have shown interest, that were only doing analytic, right? So it was a journey, but that's how we kind of progress, right? And we are also tracking the level of maturity at each individual and each department level. So we have a partnership with data platform called Data Camp, which has an embedded skill set assessment, right, mechanism. So those people are assessed on a regular basis on the progression of their skill. And of course, we're monitoring how many hours they're spending, how many use cases they're actually developing, how many times do they access the platform, how many query are they doing. We are monitoring all of that in order to decide that, okay, this guy is a champion and need to be dedicate more time because he has the ability and the willingness also to do that.
They get paid more?
They could get promotion.
Right.
Yeah, so meaning paid more, yeah. But it's not automatic. Depends on the value that they bring to their business.
Right. I like how you identify people who are essentially, right, are impatient for change, right? And you basically rope them in and say, you know what? Here's some tools that can maybe help you get things done faster. And, as you do it over time, they become your champion and then you give them more roles. Thank you, Celine. Maybe Ab or maybe Felicia? I know Felicia set up a whole team, so you got a lot to hear from her. Ab.
I would like to just elaborate a little bit more on the root causes why return on investment for transformation is not always very apparent. And when you're looking at it end to end, it At the end, you come back to a simple thing. It's a human condition. We are the cause of it. Data availability is one thing, which everybody hides behind, but then data selection is another one. So we have very often business cases that are developed by business people and then handed over to tech people for the execution of it. It cannot work like that. We cannot come from a culture of creating business cases and then ask our product teams to go and map the world according to our business targets. And I think that's where the main conundrum lies in. And if we don't understand the impact that our business cases will generate other than imaginary numbers, we will never be able to execute to it. And if we don't execute to it, the trust is gone between what technology can deliver for the business and what the business is going to ask for from technology. Now, when we started on our transformation journey, we had, of course, our group office. Allianz is 150,000 people with 150 billion euros of revenue, so they are not a Mickey Mouse company. Any technology transformation is going to be guided from group broad strokes, and then it comes down to the regions and the countries. When we looked at that, initially, the reaction from the countries is always, can't be done, shouldn't be done, they don't know what they're talking about, this is different here. So there's a disconnect between what looks good on paper and what can be executed. And when you go back to it, then you realize we don't have actually a capture of the value streams. We don't know as the business, even as technology specialists, we don't know what it costs us today to keep a value stream the way it is versus a future value stream that we're designing from a customer first perspective. This is the first thing that we have. And the way we did go about it was we looked at what are we actually capturing, what KPIs are we looking at. I came up with the team and we found 278 KPIs that were being captured somewhere, totally uncoordinated. Everybody was looking at different data, different structures, so nothing was clearly coming up to the top. And what we did was we basically looked at all of the KPIs that were being generated and asked, how do they affect our customer experience, our employee experience, and how is our technical excellence going into it? And then we came up with 19 lead KPIs, where across all the dimensions that I just mentioned, we would have impact. And we got the buy-in from the board to run the business via these 19 lead KPIs, as we call them. When you go and check every business case that is being presented, how many of these 19 lead KPIs are being affected, then you're getting a little bit closer to the case of collaborating between business and technology. And then we're speaking the same language. And then that reflects into your data collection, data selection, and visibility and transparency of your business modeling. And this is how we did it over the last 3 years. It's not an easy task because it's a little bit of a detour. But once you get the buy-in, it does actually work. So that's how we went about that.
You know, I really like what you said about you know, everything boils down to, I mean, the issues around the company boils down to humans. So it must be humans and the processes around them that to solve them, right? You can just throw it to the IT department or to the tech folks and expect them to solve it. So obviously, you know, all this got to be resolved before you even move to the technology aspect. Thank you. Felicia, I see you nodding your head, you know.
Yeah, so for me, managing change, right, especially this kind of mega change is never easy. And the very basic question that you have to really address is what's in it for me? When the me is referring not only the employee, the business, and also the senior leaders. That is the basic question that you have to answer before you bring everybody on board. So the way we carry out this whole data transformation, especially the company that I'm in is a chemical industry, is a very stable company, very stable, running their base ERP for 22 years. And when we started to introduce that change about the power of data, where ERP is no longer the center of the universe, data is, imagine the amount of mindset shift you have to manage. How do you encourage people to embrace the value of data? How do you encourage the people to realize that change is not avoidable? So like what Celine just shared, right, is a lot of training, a lot of communication, keep repeating the value that we're trying to bring to the table. So that is something not straightforward. For me, with Infineon for about 1 year, it took me about at least 6 months just to reiterate the message that change is needed, why this transformation is needed, how do we bring this value to the business to create that differentiator for the business. So this is important, and at the end of the day, everything is very theoretical. Ultimately, you have to deliver the outcome. What outcome do we as a group that we want to deliver? The outcome can be in an area of financial, or the outcome is for your customers. Choose the outcome, and then it's easier for you to drive it forward and able to show that tangible value to the people. When people see it, they will be on board. But if everything is so theoretical, the hard selling will continue. So that is my personal advice on this whole transformation journey.
Thank you, Felicia. And I mean, if there's one takeaway I can get from what you're sharing, right, it would be really that it wouldn't be overnight, and it would take it's not fast to change mindsets, right? Thank you, Ethan.
Yeah, sure. So my view is that there's a lot of conversations, right? A lot of talk around digitalization, digital transformation, and everything, and it all sounds very tech, right, and somewhat futuristic, right? However, I believe that the fundamentals haven't changed, right? So basically, it is, and it will probably always be about being competitive as a business, right? It's about surviving in the marketplace. It's about staying relevant to our customers. It's about standing out from our competition, and it's about delivering value at an attractive price point. Right? So all these fundamentals haven't changed. And when it comes to managing stakeholders, I believe it would be better if we could anchor it on these fundamentals instead of around all these new digital terms that we see around, right? And then I guess it would be more relatable to our stakeholders, right? And in doing so, I believe that the stakeholders become less of someone we have to actively manage, right? And over time, they may become partners or even allies who are equally vested and driven as you are in driving these changes and in achieving success. Yeah, that's what I have to add.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ipan. So, we talk about, strategy, we've talked about vision, talk about, repeatedly, pushing on the digital agenda. But question, right? Does the panelists on this panel have any suggestions on how companies or organizations can measure the impact or results of their digital initiative? I mean, how do you measure the outcome to basically go back to the board and say, hey, what we have set out to do, we have achieved them. And we have you're all from diverse industries. So I think it'd be interesting to hear, how you can do that. Maybe Felicia will go.
Yeah, so maybe I would like to share how we go about doing it. So first of all, we actually establish a very clear framework. Just like any other organization, which I'm quite sure you have faced it, business will have a long list of digital initiative that they like to push forward for their business, whether from an expansion angle. But what is important in the framework itself, the criteria to select your initiative to even design and implement, that to me is very important. So for organization, our 3 basic criteria are firstly from a financial impact angle, areas like EBIT uplift or market share expansion. The other angle we look at is actually about cost optimization within the organization. So it's not about just revenue focus, but it's also on our overall operation angle. And lastly, on our people, especially in the area of upscaling, the investment that we need to bring our people to the next level. When all these criteria are all defined, what is important is that we actually go through a very clear prioritization process through a council. The way we set our council is well represented by every single business function in the council. The way we're doing it is so that everybody has an equal share. When you look at your business initiative, which is the top 5 that you want to push for as an investment for the organization. Once that is done, to us, it's a committed investment to push forward. So once it's committed, we start tracking it. quarterly. And the way we track it quarterly is more from a due diligence angle, not so much of selling the base case, get the funding, and we move on. We did it very differently this time around. We actually used the whole agile capital venture method. So when the top 5 initiatives have been agreed, approved to move forward, the way we allocate the funding is in a very agile practice via your minimal viable product. And that's how we allocate the funds. So the moment the outcome is derived from your MVP, we release a second batch of funding. So in a way, it actually drives some discipline within the organization that when you push for an initiative, you have a certain commitment, but at the end of the day, the returns that we have committed to deliver. So that's the approach that we are adopting right now.
So it wouldn't be a case of a mega project that goes on and on and on, and people are wondering where's the output as the result, and then there'd be huge argument, over the fiasco and so on, right? So you have small concrete outcomes, measure it, and essentially, the discipline to basically create minimum viable product and allocate budget based on that. Cool. I see making some notes.
This is the beauty of having a panel like this and a setting like this. It just gets you to reiterate and look at it from a different perspective. I would say I agree with you. There are different dimensions attached to this. One is the technology platform and how people are structured in your organization. If you don't have an agile structure in place, you can't do that. So if you're still a little bit more traditionally oriented, that is very difficult to execute. So you need to actually look at it overall to say, how is my people management matching my technology planning? And obviously, if you have a robust system to look at, as I mentioned, the KPIs that we take as lead KPIs going forward, because we know they have the biggest impact on the business, what it boils down to at the end is really creating what's the output in terms of monetary levels. Once you have that number that you can reasonably put back to the initiative, you're getting now a very non-contentious a data stream where people cannot anymore question you on the basis of what it is that you're doing, because you have the numbers to back it up. And you can go back in the value stream and say, look, this is the tweak that we did here that freed up X hours of man work. And this translates to X, Y, Z. And our customer experience has gone up and the employee experience has gone up. So I think at the end of the day, the way you can tie it down without bogus numbers and made up numbers, like we're always, have been taught via business cases. You don't get a business case approved if the numbers don't look good. To make the numbers look good, you have to exaggerate the premise of the business case and the assumptions. And already you're not going to hit the business case, but you need to put those numbers out so you get the funding for it. So what you just said is exactly the solution for it, but it creates a structural shift in the organization that needs to be done, that many people are still in the middle of doing. They're not there yet. I know very few companies in our industry, in the insurance industry, that have a fully agile setup. Not even our technology teams are doing it that way. And if they are doing it that way, they're not using all the tools available to them in terms of reporting the impact. So that's another thing that you need to look at. I think overall, you need to have the willingness for full transparency. And full transparency means I need to be not worried about if something doesn't go to plan, because actually I can go do my root cause analysis and I can fix it. And when I fix it, that gives me credibility as a tech provider or as an internal team to go back and say, look, this is what the original assumption was. It didn't come out, but here's what we learned from it. And this is how we're going to go forward. So it is, in a case, a continuous improvement program. And it might take years. In our case, it took more than 3 years, but at the end where we were was much better place than where we had been. And it took out all the misty, the shady, the foggy assumptions that sit behind explaining numbers. And that transparency is making everybody's life easier. But, and it goes back to the human condition, you need to be willing to accept what comes out at the end as the truth. And you can't sugarcoat it.
And if it doesn't work? And if it doesn't work?
It cannot not work, because you're improving along something that is scientific.
Okay, I mean, what if a certain initiative doesn't seem to be working?
Then you can them. And this is what we did, because at the end of the day, we had an assumption on our core platform that proved to be not right. And it was a massive project. And what we decided for the region was, when we talk about hyper-localization, that's in the customer context, but also in the technology context, you have a different subset of realities here compared with European countries. Your cost base is different, your customer base is different, your premiums are different. So you cannot, back to Sundi's talk earlier in the intro, you cannot transfer, or it was, I think, Darren, you cannot transfer a system that worked somewhere else under different conditions and expect it to work the same way here. And you need to have then the guts to say, look, guys, we've worked on this. We have delivered some of it. We've delivered good chunks of it, but these are the learnings and we should not continue on this path for the next 10 years. And then you basically have to can it. And this is where a maturity of an organization comes in. And in Allianz's case, it made sense. And they did make that decision, which I have to applaud. Not many companies would do that.
Thank you for sharing. Ipan, anything else to chip in on this?
Yeah, so maybe to add on to what Felicia has shared is that when it comes to measuring the impact, right, typically we won't go very far wrong if we align it to the company's overall strategy and goals, right? Yeah, but a lot of times this will be typically framed in terms of customers or financial metrics. Right? Because we are all obsessed about the customers, right? We want them to keep coming back for more. We want to grow the top line, improve the bottom line, and all that, right? But what I would suggest is also to look into, it from many other factors, right? And very importantly, to look at the impact to the internal operations, as well as the impact to the employee engagement, right? And I believe that these are important because we don't just want to achieve success. We want it to be very sustainable, right? And by introducing all these digital initiatives, we may make our internal operations a bit more complex, right? Because many times you introduce additional digital channels, right? Then you end up having to maintain multiple processes, right? To cater to different segments of the customers and all that. So it becomes a bit more complex. And over time, it may become very challenging to sustain, right? What the customers expect from you, right? And in addition, and sometimes this will lead to change management is not done well, right? It may lead to disengagement across the employees, right? It may lead to morale problem, it may lead to attrition, right? Then this will make the success even harder to sustain, right? So what I would suggest is really to look into all these various factors, right? So that you understand the impact that you're causing to the overall organization and you'll be able to sustain the success going forward.
Thank you so much, Ipan. And I can't believe how fast time seems to be flying by. I mean, we still have some time, right? But I might need to jump ahead a little bit. And so question, right? And this is about people, right? I mean, I think a lot of the discussion today we talk about is really the humans, the people around it. So when it comes to people, what are some ways out there, if the panelists have any recommendations that we can, upskill the data and analytics skill sets of the folks in our company? And Up is smiling away, but okay. Ipan, you want to go first?
Maybe I can start this time, yeah. Right, so I guess there are a lot of courses out there that's available, right, offered by all the tertiary institutions, by the product vendors, right, as well as all these are great online learning platforms and all that, right. All these are very good, they're wonderful for building up the technical capabilities, right. But eventually all these capabilities will need to be channeled towards tackling a real world problem. Right, and I believe that is one critical area which we need to upskill, right, our analytics and our data science team, right. And one probably easy way to do so is to get them, right, pull them away from their data lakes, right, their algorithms and their great visualization tools and all that, and put them into the business, right. Get them to spend time deep in the trenches, right, so that they have a better appreciation of the business operations, the working environment, right? So they have a sense of what the customers are like and what they really, really want, right? And I believe in doing so, this will help them to be more effective in their work, right? This will help avoid situations where they operate in an ivory tower and come up with models and insights that may not be very reflective of the reality on the ground, right? And personally, I'll go one step further. I would not restrict this practice to just the analytics and data science team, right? I would love to send apply the practice to my entire IT team, right? Because I believe this will help them to be all more effective in supporting the business.
Thank you. Celine, I think it's already on.
Sorry. I think I switched it up. Yeah, because I saw a question as well, right? I think you don't get those type of skill set overnight, right? It's not like you're going to go for 3 days training and then you become analyst and data scientist. So that's why my vision is that, it's always better to get those people from the business that are trained to analytics, maybe sometime hire 1 or 2 people that are from analytics. And I saw there was a question about where does the budget come from? Well, the budget come from each of the, department and business themselves, right? So they are validated centrally during those governance meeting of, data board. But so I do a budget. I show the organization how much that will cost to be able to get dedicated analysts. So usually I work also with a lot of university, right? So you can get a lot of grant in Singapore when you upskill people or reskill people. So I would say that, they are part also of those resources that are funded, right? Through Skills Future, IBF, or for our case in the financial services industry. And so I make a budget on how much it costs. I show what would be the benefit looking at 1 or 2 of the biggest use case for each department. And then I show them this is what you need to hire if you want to get those benefits, right? So I focus also a lot on the people. I take the centrally all the platform costs, platform software. So actually the department needs to actually fund the people and the upskilling, right? Similarly for the training, I told them this is the cost. This is how many people you need to train. I can set up the content with the trainer, but you need to pay for it. You need to be willing, right? I'm not, there's no free lunch, right? So if you want to be able to benefit from data in your department, then, you need to pay for it, right? So I can help you, but I'm not paying for you, right? The only thing is the infrastructure. And then of course the governance, right? Activity that we need to have that needs to be centralized. But I think they need to show willingness, right? Otherwise they won't be willing to change, right? It's the same thing as, you go to therapy and you need to pay for your therapist because then, you're going to be willing to work for it, right? And it's the same thing. If you provide this for free, then people won't change. If you actually try to help them to get good cost and evaluation of benefit, then this is kind of easier. And things that we do is also mentoring between people from the business and data scientists, right? So we have like reverse mentoring, especially my data scientists don't come from financial industry, right? They come from tech company most of the time, right? So Grab, media, whatever. So they're not really always used to financial services industry, but they're quite techy. And so I pair them with managing director from the business, right? Product, risk, or, even like the relationship manager, right? So they learn what it is to be a banker. Another thing that we have is we have a monthly data family forum where anyone can join, where during that time we just, like showcase tips about Python and coding and some visualization that has been done. We're helping them to create template. And then one thing that we're going to be setting up soon is Python Thursday. So the data scientists will take turn. We have a program that has been defined to just, teach Python best practice and library to everyone, 2 hours every Thursday. So who wants to join can join. Again, this is something that we are following up on the back end as metric.
Right. I had this saying, right, there's always a queue for free lunch, right? But when a rubber meets the road, are they really serious? If they're serious, then it's time to put down some budget for that. Right. And we have just enough time to take one of the questions from the floor. And I saw one that probably gave a smile just now. One of them is, how do you convince the board to stop your DX journey midway? Maybe it didn't work, or it not give you the results that you wanted, to pivot or restart and still keep your job.
I knew that would land with me.
It's the one, right?
But yeah, I think it's a wonderful question. And I think whoever asked that question is responding exactly to the human condition. It's a fear, right? How much of our work is driven by fear of failure? I would posit 95%. We don't want to fail. It doesn't feel good. Not only does it not feel good, other people wait for you to fail, and then they hammer you still more because you're in transformation, you're in change. Everybody accepts that change is happening, but everybody wants to be in their bubble that doesn't get changed. So the minute you flounder and falter and you fall, you get the kicks. It's human condition. I wouldn't take it personal. I needed years to learn that this is not personal. So to the question, how do you convince your board to pivot or move away from a project? First of all, you need to have your fundamentals solid. When you start, when you embark on it, do you know the current metrics that you are about to change? If you don't know that, and if you went hoorah into a project because the board demanded of you that we need a new customer journey here or we need a new solution there, if you don't have your base metrics on what it costs you today to run your current operations, and if you haven't clarified what the optimization potential is and where it sits, you'll be lost. You will have a very tough stand then to come back and say, look, you asked me to do this, and we're seeing it's not coming through, so we should not do this. So number one. Number two, if you have the metrics in place and the results are still not showing, you need to analyze why. Is it your understanding of the customer behavior? Do you have data on the customer behavior? How much data is actionable and how much of that data is giving you insights as to what you're doing is right or not? Remember what I said in the beginning, customer excellence, employee excellence, these are dimensions that you can measure. You can see your customer satisfaction after every interaction. Equally, you can ask for your employees about the interactions they have or what they do on a daily basis when they interact with the customer, what their pain points are, and are you actually resolving those? Those are data points that you can bring in to measure whether a certain change in your processes is yielding the results that you want. Now, what this question finally targets is to say, if I don't hit the numbers, how do I go back? Well, if you did the original assumptions and they are wildly off, good luck. Not going to happen. But if you didn't do the original numbers, you have a little bit of a saving grace there and say, look, I wasn't in charge of the business case, and here's what came out. But never go to the board and say this has failed, and I don't know what to do. Go to the board and say, this has failed. Here's a root cause for it. These assumptions were out of whack. During the analysis and implementation, we saw that this and this and this is coming out, but here's the good news. Our original assumptions are no longer valid, but these are replacing these original assumptions. And if we put these assumptions in place, we have a 90% chance of success. And if you allow us, then we will focus on this for the next quarter to see whether we can capture this. If we can still not capture it, then we'll come back to the board and report. That gives you credibility and transparency on how you're going to do this. And it takes away the fear factor because you've primed everything already. And then you can go back and say, well, we didn't quite hit the numbers, but we understand why we didn't hit them. If I was the board, and I have been on the board of our Lanka business, previous company in the Indian business, when management came to the board and said, look, here's the analysis, you always give them the chance to remediate. But if people come and just say, you're the board, you decide what you want to do with us, well, guess what? You're part of the problem. And if you're part of the problem, we're not going to give you the mandate to create the next problem. Right? So, and that's where fear comes in. Be open, talk to the board properly about what it is that you are not achieving and why you're not achieving it. And it will be a very bad board that puts you under the bus.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. Well, I know all good things must come to an end. Our time is up for this panel discussion, but by all means, I believe all of them will be here for the rest of the day. Grab them during the tea breaks, grab them during lunch, and let's keep up the discussion going. Thank you so much. Let's give them a big hand, shall we?
Thank you, Paul and the panelists. What a great conversation we had and a good start for the morning. What I've learned, look out for those champions. He or she may be sitting right next to you. Change management is really important. Don't forget operations and employee engagement and over customers and financial metrics. And lastly, know your base metrics because it might just keep your job. Right, we are entering a morning break or a coffee break at Shangri-La and at the live event. But before that, I'd like to ask you, our online audience, that we have a special program just for you. We will have a live music session by award-winning performer Nicole Lowe. And we will then follow it by an interesting past event recording titled Experiences Matter, How Seamlessness Boosts Omnichannel Engagement. Find out how digital marketing and e-commerce leaders actually view omnichannel, direct to consumer, and the usage of data. At this moment, I do want to mention that we are running an industry survey. So we want to know you better, especially in your priorities and budgets, and how are they being allocated to the projects you are driving. So please take a few minutes to complete the survey. The QR code is on the screen and the link is in the chat. This will help us create better thought-provoking content and help you in your data and digital roles. And later today, we will have 3 online lucky draws. And mind you, as Jonathan, our CEO, mentioned earlier, these lucky draws are separate from the one that is going and live. So we have prizes, interesting prizes like Google Pixel Buds, Fitbit Lux, and more. So do stay with us throughout the day and hope you'll be walking home with one of those lovely prizes.